That's the great Coolio course, and he knows how to get there. Or does he? Or do we know how to get there? It's true, our brains now have been scientifically proven to show exactly where we're going and where others are going, which is really interesting. So let's jump in, find out, and see how we get there. So what I'm looking at here is this new science of how our brains track where we go and others go. We'd really like to know where others go, don't we? There's some form of kind of like innate just curiosity in ourselves as humans to want to know where you go, where I go, where Hugo go. Who's Hugo? Where we all want to know where somebody else goes. We all want to know, perhaps just curiosity's sake, not from a stalker's sake, what people are doing. It's just kind of human nature, isn't it? So we're looking at this study and it's saying, hey, there's a revelation of what's going on with regard to this is what's actually happening. You can actually find out and trace and track within your own brain where you've been and how you'll get there and how others are getting there in the same amount of time. Now what they've looked at is basically social distancing, obviously, and just how it could be actually really, really important for us all in this world that we live in, to know that we actually can trust physically distancing ourselves and other people as well. So it's not that people don't have a neurological issue with this now. There's some sort of attitude or psychological issue if they're not socially distancing from you when you're actually wanting them to be away from you. Quote unquote, we studied how our brain reacts when we navigate a physical space. First alone and then with others, which is really interesting. So senior author, Satana, which is the Ruth and Raymond Stuttier, or Stotter, even chair in neurosurgery and an assistant professor of neurosurgery, etc., etc. So she said, quote unquote again, our results imply that our brains, here's the exciting thing, create a universal signature. Now think of a signature when you're signing something. So there's this universal signature that our brain actually sees to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Now there's two interesting things there. One is, as I said, the signature. And if we think of a map and we pinpoint a map and we want to actually get from A to B, the old-fashioned way of going on a journey, a car journey, was getting your pencil out and saying, right, that's where I want to go and here's where I'm coming from. And you just draw a line, or you start mapping the route from the highway to the smaller road to the by road and so on. And you find the easiest and quickest way to get there. And there might be several ways, so you might use different colour pens and so on. And the second thing that's really interesting there is that we can put ourselves in someone else's shoes. Now again, this is stalker alert. We don't want stalkers using this information. But the reality is, if you work your brain enough, you'll be able to figure out where people are at a certain time. You'll be able to understand things better. That's shock horror. Most people of a certain age group earlier on in the years are going to be looking at electronic gadgets, screens and so on to bring them where they want to go. But the reality is and I love this word because I've just made it up, maybe I've heard it before, laserifying your brain. And that's what we're doing. We're actually laserifying our brains. So we have technology out there for helping us to do things, to go further, faster and so on. Sport is an example. But if we want to actually make sure that our brain and that part of our brain is working well in the future as we go on in years, and not just that, but even in short-term walking journeys, running journeys, if you want to get away from somebody, especially if we're being chased, imagine if you're being chased, you want to be able to know that you can navigate without technology. If you don't use it, you lose it. Simple as that. What they're looking at here is that, quote unquote, earlier studies have shown that low frequency brainwaves by neurons in the medial temporal lobe helps rodents keep track of where they are as they navigate a new place. Said the author, Stangl, a postdoctoral scholar in Sonata's lab, quote unquote, we wanted to investigate this idea of people that test whether they could also monitor others near them. Really interesting. Now you can obviously say to yourself, yeah, I remember where I went there. I remember when I came back from there, and I know I can go back there again. Even if you were overseas on holiday and so on, you can revisit that place 10 years later and you know exactly where you're going in a shopping mall where the toilets is located. That's the wonderful thing about our brains. I remember a guy who was like 5 years of age getting away from his parents in a pub that he'd never been before, and suddenly he found where the toilet was. Why? Because he had seen it coming through the door. Imagine that. So he was able to navigate through the crowds and through the people that are way up taller than him. So our brains are able to navigate this. We know this, but our other brains, here's the thing, other people's brains, which is really cool. We can now figure out and time how people are going to certain places and understand how they've got there. So if they're 10 minutes late, then this one, if they're 10 minutes late, then essentially we can reason with them saying, well, how are you late? I mean, we can actually prove now, because they can't give us excuses. Well, I went this route and that route and all that. You know how long it takes. They know how long it takes, and they're bluffing you if it takes longer. But also, you can, if you're leaving with somebody, racing with somebody, you're going to be able to navigate their way, even if they go a different way, and they're going to be able to navigate your way without any electronics. And the important thing here is you really need to work your brain. So in the experiment, what they did was they had each person, each patient, wear a backpack that was instructed to explore an empty room, find a hidden spot, and remember it exactly in the future. Now, it sounds like easy peasy, but I mean, if you've never been in the room before and it's not exactly square or lit up, then you're going to find it very difficult, not just to find and go and navigate the room, but also to find the hidden spot and then to be able to do it again. Now, this backpack was the thing, the electronics, the technology that they actually used to experiment with this, and that's how they proved it. Now, what effect does that have on us and our world? Well, we've seen the likes of Top Gear, the UK programme, and we even have Joey from Friends in it. And these guys do something really cool. They have a race. They take different types of vehicles. So they might take a car, the other one might take a bus, and actually drive the bus as well. The other one might take a bicycle and so on. And then they go from one place, A, to B. But it's not as simple as that. They might take different routes, and then the other person actually might take a different vehicle. Then they might complicate it again by having traffic on the road. So you might actually go one route that is more direct, A to B, as the crow flies as such. And then the other person might go the longer route with a faster vehicle. Then again, the person might run, might walk, might cycle and so on. So it's about getting there and what's more economical. They might just factor in traffic, hours of traffic, 8 in the morning or 5 in the evening coming from work and so on. So this is the cool thing about it. What do people do? Of course, they use these types of technologies like sat navs, and they try to get from one place to the other. But it doesn't always work out as safely as that. And if we don't use our brains, and it sounds very technical, but it's very true, we could have a serious issue going on even before we're older. One of those things happened in Death Valley. And it happened to a mother and her child and their friend, and both or all three were very intelligent human beings. They were the children, the women, the girls that is, they were in their late teens, and the mother was not an elderly woman. They trusted and were interested totally by this navigation system that was pulling them through Death Valley to get from one place A to B via Death Valley, but it brought them into the wrong area completely. And such was their problems that they were dehydrating in the desert heat. Even though they had water, they drank it all. And then, of course, you start to get delusional. You start to have a breakdown with your health system within yourself, that is, like your kidneys and so on. You become just very afraid. And, of course, what happens as well? Your gas goes in your car. And this is what happened to these people. It's true, not everybody is in Death Valley, but it happens in the modern day, and it can happen to you too. So we need to work ourselves, take the technology, pull it aside for once, work that brain, know that it works, because new science is saying it does. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you. Until next time, have a wonderful day.